The saying is, are you really choosing when you're stuck between a rock and a hard place? And I don't think that it's true choice, true unadulterated consent in these instances. There was for a real life example, Professor Williams from the University of Stellenbosch presented an example of a woman who was on the waiting list for an RDP house, and she was approached by a man who told her that she was at the top of the waiting list, and then he politely walked into the house and laid on the bed and said that sexual favor would need to occur for the deal to be sealed. She was shocked, declined, and has not received that house and still living in a shack. So I don't think it's true. Yeah, it really is, like Sipe said in the beginning, you're choosing between basic services and your right to dignity.
All right, so if we go back to the example that Sheniece shared, right, about the woman who was on the RDP waiting list. So if we go to that example, our current anti-corruption legislative framework fails to protect that woman, right? And the reason we say that is PRECA, which is the Preventing and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, it criminalizes corruption, rightfully so, but it criminalizes both the corruptor and the corruptee, right? So then if the woman in our example there had complied with the demand and slept with the official, and then thereafter reported the incident, she would also be prosecuted as a co-conspirator to corruption. So that's why we say that the law as it currently stands fails to protect her, right? So those are some of the limitations. And when we started doing this work, we find that other organizations as well are saying we should all advocate for sexual corruption to be criminalized. And at the moment, we are faced with two options. And the one, I think Sheniece mentioned, that we should amend our existing laws, right? So we can try and amend the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act to include sexual corruption, but without inadvertently criminalizing the corruptee as well, right? That's like one of our options. Or we can also amend our Sexual Offences Act. So that's the first option, just amending existing laws. Or the second option could be to try and develop an entire legislative framework that just deals with sexual corruption. Because that's the other thing. Sexual corruption doesn't happen only in public service or in the provision of basic services. We see it manifest in very, very different ways. For example, we've heard of stories of lecturers now demanding sex for marks. We've heard of students demanding sex for accommodation. And there was this other horrible story that Uzakona, who is leading Awaken, she said that, I think this happened sometime last year, young lady posted on, I think it was Facebook, right? Something along the lines of, if you want a job at this municipality, who do you sleep with, right? That was the post. And the most frightening thing is that instead of people being shocked by that question, people responded with names. They said, no, this is the person that you sleep with to get a job at that municipality, right? So now that's the other scary thing, that it's become part of our society. People have become to accept this is just, the way it goes. And I've heard as well of people, like, let's say you apply for a job, you qualify for the job, you get called for an interview, but then after the interview you will be asked to do something else in order to guarantee that you get that job. So essentially what we're trying to do is, number one, criminalize sextortion, but we're still trying to figure out what the best way to do that is. Is it amending our existing laws, or should we try and develop a different legislation that just focuses on sexual corruption?